The TCG SCOOPS Show is part of the Booster Pack Network. For more TCG-related content, visit theboosterpacknetwork.com. Hosting for this show is sponsored by Category 1 Games, the go-to shop for all of your classic TCG needs. Find your favorites or discover something new at category1games.com.
Hello and welcome to TCG Scoops, the show on the internet where we talk about the big news from the biggest three TCGs in the world, that is Yu-Gi-Oh!, Magic, and Pokemon. My name is Rands, and here on the Booster Pack Network, I am joined by some experts in some other games. Now, the reason they're joining me is because I ain't got the time to rummage through and find out all the news from the latest TCGs with so much happening in the world of trading card games nowadays. So I've assembled this team from my local game store to tell me all about what's going on in the world of their games. Now, you probably, if you've watched episodes before, know who these people are, but I'm going to get them to sound off. We've got a Magic expert,
Nico.
And we got our Pokemon expert,
Tyler.
And we got our Yu-Gi-Oh! Expert,
Parker.
All right, and then they're going to tell us about the month's worth of news coming out of those big three TCGs. Before I jump in, by all means, if you have been following the network or the channel for a while, jump on, see one of our previous videos. It's asking for your suggestions on how we're going to change the show and change the network as well. We're going to go through a bit of a metamorphosis, so I want to hear your suggestions. Find that and reach out to us either via the email listed in the description or via comments if you're watching this on YouTube. And we're going to try and bring a brand new type of show to you, hopefully something that is just as interesting, just as fun, just as spicy, but also incorporating a whole bunch of new TCG stuff as well. Okay, so let's jump in, not waste any time, because there has been a ton of news that I've just heard about in the periphery from all of these games this month since the last time we got together. So let's start over in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Stable. What is news, Parker, in the world of Yu-Gi-Oh! This month?
All right, so just last week we had the World Championships for Yu-Gi-Oh! We got our very first winner from the USA in the entire year or time of Yu-Gi-Oh!
Like the first ever world's winner that is a U.S. player?
From U.S., yeah.
Wow, okay.
And in total, there's only been 5 winners from the TCG, and Japan alone has 8.
Okay.
So, it's pretty rough for the TCG usually, mostly because, people kind of assume that the OCG gets their cards months before us, so they have way more time to practice with the cards. So yeah, it was Paulie Anderson, and he was playing Dragon Link, which has been a very popular deck for a long time. It's been in the World Championships 3 times, I believe now.
That's what you get for having a non-rotating game, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's gotten a lot of bans or hits on the ban list, but yeah, it's still doing really well. It's got a lot of good support in the last few sets. There's a lot of Dragon support that came out that makes it really powerful. We also had the Master Duel Worlds, which I'll just talk about quickly. We had another TCG win in the Master Duel Worlds, which is just the first one, I believe. It was Joshua Schmidt, Jack Rory Steenkamer, and Emery Kizilates. I'm sorry, I'm butchering these names. But yeah, TCG gets 2 Worlds wins at the same time whenever we've only had 4 before this. So.
Okay, interesting.
Wow.
So so everybody knows who's listened to this show before, but if you don't and you haven't listened to this show before, TCG in Japan means the English version of Yu-Gi-Oh! Yep. OCG means their original Japanese version.
Yes.
So when you said, my curiosity gets piqued when you say that you've had Japanese winners for the TCG before.
For the World Championship, which is a combined format between the OCG and the TCG. So everybody in the world, and they do a combined ban list.
Okay.
Kind of.
And how do you get a Japanese player playing TCG in that scenario?
So I wouldn't call it TCG. It's kind of like a mixed
format.
format.
Right, like a hybrid type thing.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So it's the combination. So whoever wins the OCG championships or whatever goes against whoever wins the TCG championships.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
In an weird exhibition-y type
situation.
And
then they have to build this crazy deck with 2 different ban lists in mind, or they have a combined ban list, and then they have to pretty much throw it out the window, all the stuff that they learned from the TCG.
It's really interesting. It's like a custom format specifically for Worlds. Wow.
Yeah, and it's really because a big difference between the TCG and the OCG is a card called Max C, which I'm going to talk about later because there's something interesting that came up, and it's very banned in the TCG. Nobody wants it back, but everybody apparently likes it in the OCG.
Okay.
It's super oppressive. It says every time your opponent special summons a card, they get to draw, or you get to draw one. So you can draw as many as you want, as long as they keep special summoning, which lets you draw into more hand traps. So then you can interrupt them and blow up their board. So yeah, it's legal in Master Duel as well. But yeah, was a card I don't believe they were allowed to play in the World Championship.
Okay.
So, yeah, it's a very interesting format.
I just imagine there's like the judges who just got all the band cards from both of them in a big like bingo thing and just pulling it out before the game. All right, so this time we'll be we won't be using Maxi this time.
That'd be interesting.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
If you had on your ban list bingo card, boom.
And then for the Master Duel Worlds, they had it was a 3v3 format. So everyone had like a combined card pool, so you could only use 3 copies between the 3 decks, or the 3 players, and you could bring 6 decks, I believe, so that you could swap out. And I believe you could also pick 3 cards that were legal for all decks. You could play 3 copies in every deck.
Okay.
You picked that.
That seems initially confusing. But
And I'm pretty sure Maxi was in every single deck.
Okay.
I'm not even sure initially. I'm still confused.
Yeah.
So, they had combined card pools, but they could pick 3 cards
that were exempt
weren't
from
limited.
Right.
That you could play 3 in each deck.
Interesting.
That's interesting because, Magic used to do things like that for their pro events. You'd have
Right.
certain events that would have a weird, different format. They would do, especially the invitational events where they were mostly funny formats, kind of meant to be, fun for top players to try to figure out. But they've done a couple weird ones in the past where it'd be, just different types of drafts or block constructed, extended with things. It's a whole
it's kind of like
history
a
of
real
strange
skill
Magic
testing
formats played at tournaments.
Get the really good players out of their comfort zone.
Exactly.
I mean, I can't speak to too much, but I know in a Magic perspective, the first ever Pro Tour, you had to have 5 cards from one set, 5 cards from another set, 5 cards from the latest set. And it was just a mess.
It was a huge mess, and people just hid all the bad cards in the sideboard.
Yeah, exactly.
Didn't put them in their decks.
Required. Anyway, so back to the happenings of Yu-Gi-Oh.
Yeah, so we had a couple new sets come out. So Duelist Nexus is the most recent set, and they're doing something interesting now. They instead of doing these the big high rarity cards, they have a new one called the Quarter Century Rare.
Okay.
Which is in honor of the 25th anniversary or whatever.
Okay, right. I thought maybe you open it once every 25 years or something like that. It's like an Ark of the Covenant. Yeah.
And there's one card. It's called Magician of Bonds and Unity.
Okay.
Which it's not really a good card. It's pretty much just a vanilla with no stats.
Oh, it sounds like it's in an S&M or something like that.
Yeah, very
in
much.
Classic style, yeah.
So it only comes out in a Quarter Century Rare, and they're doing the same card in a Quarter Century Rare for the next 4 sets. So, or this set and the next 3 sets, I guess. So there's going to be 4 different versions of this in Quarter Century Rare, and they're all going to have different color backgrounds.
This exact functionally same card.
Exact card. It's not even a playable card. It's like a Dark Magician, basically, with no support.
Okay, weird.
It is weird, yeah.
Like a normal
It's
card.
like a collector's thing. People just want to get the whole set, I guess.
Maybe they're just trying to play into Magic's collector's thing right now, trying to just hop on that train.
Yeah, just or even Pokemon.
Well, that's what Pokemon generally
yeah.
does, right? We have base printings for things, and then they'll make alternate printings of several cards for the collectors to really chase after.
There's not even a base printing of this card. You can only get it in Quarter Century.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah,
and the fact that it's not playable. Have you seen any supporter cards for it or anything?
No.
So it's not even an archetype or something like that. It's not even a bondage archtype or something. You can
that
play
would be interesting.
That would, whips and chains, right?
Yeah.
Sushi ships and bondage.
Yeah.
Wouldn't surprise me. But yeah, okay, this is interesting. We'll keep an eye on that.
Yeah, there's been so they releasing 25 Quarter Century Rares in each set, and one of them is obviously this. There's going to be 24 from the actual set list that you can get in the Quarter Century Rare, and then there's this one, of course.
Okay.
So in the Duelist Nexus, we had a lot of interesting stuff. So we got some support for Unchained, which is a good rogue deck right now. Synchron and Infernoble as well are doing well. One of the decks I'm excited about is Rescue Ace. That's what I've been playing. It got some really good support in this set, and it's doing really well. It's actually really popular in the OCG because it doesn't play into Max C very much.
Okay. What's this archetype? Is this like kittens with hard hats on or something like that? Is that what this is?
I'll talk about that next.
Oh, okay. Right, yeah. I've been seeing that floating around. I'm like, these cats look cute. Yeah. But what's this Rescue Ace one?
This is the Firefighter.
Oh, the Firefighter. Right. Yeah. You have talked
so
about
there's a lot
that.
of warriors and machine monsters, and they do a lot of stuff.
Firefighters, warriors, and machine monsters.
Yeah,
exactly. Right.
There's a lot of machine.
Flame retardant machine monsters.
They can play a lot on your opponent's turn, which is really fun, but apparently it's kind of a controversial thing. People don't like other people playing on your turn in Yu-Gi-Oh for some reason.
Who doesn't like interaction?
Yeah, that's interaction. That's good.
Yeah,
I've never heard of that in my life.
Pokemon's what's that mean?
Interaction.
So then we have the Pearly. So Pearly got some new support in the last set, and it was a really good card, but then they also got hit on the ban list, so they kind of got knocked down a peg at the same time. In this new set, they got a lot more consistent just because they got a new extra deck monster that can search out their trap card, which they need pretty much for their combo. So Pearly is actually doing like one of the best decks right now, honestly. And then we also got the Illusion archetype, which I talked about. It's like the new type for Yu-Gi-Oh!
Yeah.
And it's actually really cool because it's like a fusion deck. It goes with you might know Gazelle from Yu-Gi, one of Yu-Gi's famous monsters. Like Gazelle, King of Mythical Beasts.
It's kind of like a Chupacabra type looking thing.
It's
like
a
from
retrain.
Not quite.
Yeah, so it's like an archetype it's like a retrain of that, and it's a fusion deck. It works really good with Branded, which I've talked about a lot in the past. It's doing really well. And then one card that came out in the set is called Crimson Dragon, which has been causing a little bit of controversy. It is a level 12 synchro monster, so you just need like 12 levels of monsters to be able to make it. And what it can do is it tags out into another extra deck, a dragon extra deck monster. So what people are doing is they're summoning this and another level 12, and you can target the level 12 and summon Hot Red Dragon Archfiend King Calamity.
Okay. I think that's a Cheetos flavor now.
Sorry?
So how do you target both of those cards?
So its effect targets a synchro and then swaps into another dragon synchro with the same level.
Okay, CCG magic.
Yeah.
Sorry, that whole name is one card?
Yeah.
Hot Red Dragon Archfiend King Calamity. Say it 5 times fast.
Okay.
Maybe a jeweler's loop out just to read the full title.
Hot Red Dragon and then Archfiend Calamity.
Right.
It's all the same name.
It makes
There's
more
a comma in
sense
there.
to me.
Yeah. But this card says that your opponent cannot activate cards or effects the turn that it is played.
Okay.
So basically, on your opponent's turn, you'll summon that as soon as you can, and then they just can't play the game for the rest of the turn.
Right.
So then
okay.
they have to
summon him, say pass your turn. Then they pass.
So basically locks him out of a turn.
Yeah, pretty
so
much.
you it's like a quick effect. So you can use the quick effect during the beginning of your opponent's turn, lock them out. Basically, it's you will go again. It's giving you another turn.
And then you just kill them because you have enough.
No wonder it's
damage
controversial.
Yeah, so a lot of people are calling for Hot Red Dragon Archfiend King Calamity to be banned. Even though this Crimson Dragon is really the thing causing the problem, it's pretty hard to summon the other guy without the Crimson Dragon, but it's brand new, so it's not going to be banned for a while.
We'll see some of that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, things giving protection, return.
A couple of things that are only still getting cracked in boosters and stuff.
A couple of rings, maybe.
Maybe.
And then, so for the next set that's coming out called Age of Overlord, and this is looking like a really good set. There's a lot of really powerful archetypes coming out. So one of them I talked about before was Dia Bellstar, which is like this, she's like a treasure hunter. It's like a new lore archetype, so she's going to be getting a lot more support in the future. And she's basically played in every single topping deck in the OCG right now. She's just that generic and powerful. One of the spells really helps it because it's like a +2 basically.
Okay.
You search the Dia Bellstar, and then in the graveyard you can banish it and then draw another card.
Okay.
So it just that alone makes it really powerful, and then it lets you play level 1 monsters for free pretty much without your normal summon. So that archetype's doing really well. I talked about Evil Eyes, which kind of works with the Dia Bellstar. It's going to be doing well as well. And then Mana Diem is one that also got support in Duelist Nexus that makes it really strong. It is one of the main decks that is summoning the Hot Red Dragon Archfiend King Calamity, and and it's getting a couple new cards in the next set that's going to make it even stronger. You're going to be able to summon this guy with one card as long as no hits on the ban list happen. So it's going to look pretty scary. There might be some hits on the ban list before that happens, and if not, then Mana Diem's looking really good.
More copying for Magic with mana, too.
Yeah. We're also getting some Labyrinth support, which is a trap deck, which historically, people kind of hate them because they mostly just play Floodgates, which, just basically means you stop your opponent from being able to do certain things. It's getting a card that lets you set a trap from your deck and activate it the same turn. So
okay.
turn 0, trap card effects.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
which is pretty new for. Well, I mean, they can pretty much already do it, but it's just going to be a lot more consistent. And with this new card coming out.
Well, that's interesting. And the thing about the trap thing is you're always supposed to set them and then let them, go. So this is, like I said, this is like a quick play Magic card, but being a trap.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Like, it's really popular in Master Duel right now.
Okay.
And then another archetype we're getting is called Horus, is what it's called right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of level 8 monsters that can pretty much summon themselves for free. They have a continuous spell that lets you. It has a 4 times per turn effect, where you can
up to 4 times you can use it. Okay,
4 times per turn.
What a restriction!
Yeah, it says discard a card and then send a Horus monster from deck to grave, and then all the Horus monsters can just special summon themselves as long as you control this continuous spell.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a really powerful like rank 8 engine because like you can use like Xyz monsters just like rank 8s, so you can summon a ton of them. It worked good with other level 8 strategies, maybe like Blue Eyes or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then another card that's coming out is called SP Little Knight, which a lot of people are worried about because this is a very broken extra deck monster that can be used in pretty much any deck. It has like 2 really powerful effects. One of them is whenever it's summoned using a or using an extra deck monster, you can just banish a card your opponent controls until I think it just banishes it.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other effect is when your opponent activates an effect, you can target 2 cards on the field and banish them until the end phase. So it's very generic, and you can use a card called IP Masquerena, which is kind of like, it's very similar in the naming, which lets you link summon on your opponent's turn. So you can play this card on your opponent's turn to banish one of their cards, and then you can also do its other effect to banish another one of their cards until the end phase.
Mm-hmm.
And it can pretty much protect itself because it can banish itself, and then that means they can't target it.
Okay, cool. Right.
So it has a lot of really powerful functions that people are excited about.
Okay.
It's pretty much in every extra deck in the OCG right now.
So the competitive meta is sort of being taped together in the future by all of this sort of stuff,
so
right?
a lot of this stuff is really influencing the meta in the OCG right now.
And when are we due to get some of that stuff?
Age of Overlord, I believe, September.
Okay, so still.
Or October. It's in the next coming months.
Okay.
We just had Duelist Nexus, so it's probably like 3 months.
Right, for the next like proper set.
Yeah.
It's a good amount of time for Dread.
Yeah.
You don't want to
try and let the OCG guys figure out if they can beat it or not.
Yeah.
And then, one thing I wanted to talk about for Master Duel is they have a statistic on the game where it tells you how used a card is, like the percentage of how much this card is used.
Mm-hmm.
And Max C, which I talked about earlier, is at 90% usage rate.
Okay, but okay. So let me get this straight. So it is banned in paper in English in the TCG, but it is active on Master Duel.
Master Duel and OCG.
Interesting, and it's getting used at a 90%.
90%, which is unheard of. Like, I know, I don't think that's even possible in Magic, and Pokemon might be like Nest Ball or Ultra Ball or something.
Something
but
like that, right?
But like those are not nearly
intentionally
as
that's
powerful.
splashable, right?
Yeah, exactly. This is this is like a hand trap that you pretty much have to run in your deck. You start deck building by putting 3 Max C, and then all the other cards that counter Max C, and then you can start building.
And then you've
your
got
deck.
12 slots left to figure out the uniqueness of your deck.
Yeah.
So reminds me of like when Yu-Gi-Oh first started, there was all those cards like Change of Heart and Monster Reborn and Reggae that you basically just had to have like that 3 when it was allowed 3 of like just that base of all of them each time, and then you could build on top of that.
Yeah.
I think the closest thing in Magic to that type of effect, it did get banned obviously very, very quickly, was Mental Misstep.
Okay.
Which was 1 Phyrexian blue mana or pay 2 life.
Yeah.
You never pay the mana for it. To counter a spell that costs 1 because everyone would start running 4 Mental Misstep to counter the other mental missteps. And that was the only way to deal with mental missteps.
It's a lot of misstepping.
Other than just play no 1-drops. And 1-drops are a huge important part of Magic.
Yeah. Or you're the Ring as well.
Well, that's changed a little bit.
Okay, I can't wait to hear. I haven't kept up with that. All right, back to... So Maxi, big deal in the digital
extremely
client.
powerful. People have been wanting it banned. Like it's so funny because before Master Duel came out, people used to do polls on the internet like, can Maxi come back in the TCG? And it would be like a 50-50. Exactly. Like every time it would be like a 50-50. And then since Master Duel came out, I'm pretty sure it's like a 80-20 or like a 90-10 or something. People don't want Maxi back anymore.
I wonder about the last one.
Yeah. Because like people say that it checks combo decks because like, if they're comboing off, you can just draw a bunch of cards. But if you don't have Maxi, they do their full combo, they can still max you as well. While having a bunch of negates on board, they can still draw a bunch of cards while you're trying to break their board. So it's just really annoying to go against, and it decides so many games. I think someone did a statistic for the World Championship that said if you activated Maxi, you were 20% more likely to win the game. It doesn't sound crazy, but like
no, but that is
it's a big deal.
Just from one card going
One
off.
card, yeah.
Okay. Wow.
Games based on harnessing randomness. That is a lot of advantage.
You have to play like at least 6 cards just to counter it, just because it's that powerful. And then that's pretty. I have like some of the best decks right now. Kashtira, which I've talked about a lot, is still doing really powerful. Kind of hoping for some more hits on the ban list. Pearly is doing really well as well. And then there's obviously Labyrinth. Branded is still doing well. Dragon Link, which won Worlds, so that one's definitely really powerful. Runic Sprite is another one that's kind of cool because it's like 2 engines together, and then you can play either a live twin version or a fur hire version, which both have like their own benefits. They pretty much let you draw a bunch of cards, and you have a million interruptions, which is always fun. There's Math Mech, which is just a Cybers deck that has a really powerful like one-turn kill line where they can summon a big monster that can attack twice and destroy your whole board. Then there's the Rika deck, which is the plant deck that I talked about last time that won the European Championship. Pretty much nobody plays that in the U.S. or like North America anyway. It's mostly a European deck, which is kind of weird.
Okay.
Like, a lot of people play it in Europe, but nobody plays it in North America.
It's bizarre that it's got this little pocket meta.
because there's no differences in the
pool,
games.
the card pool.
It's like a regional meta thing, I guess.
Yeah,
it's weird. It's mostly just Jessica who does really well with it. That was the one who won the championship. And then we have Vanquish Soul, which is getting some more support in the next sets too. That one's doing well. And then we just have a couple more rogue decks like Gold Pride and Exo Sister. So it's a pretty healthy meta. We have a lot of decks that are like doing well. It's just Kashtira is still on top because it has some very oppressive gameplay.
Well, it has been sort of like the meta beast of, since we pretty much started this podcast, we've been talking about it for ages. I can't imagine how the players at a ground level are feeling about constantly being barraged with more Kashtira,
And like,
it's tier 0 stuff.
It's so strong because like some people, like one of the cards in the Kashtira deck is called Kashtira Fenrir, and it's generic. You can just special summon it in any deck. It can search itself, so you can just play 3 of them in any deck. And people started playing that with one of the extra deck monsters just to counter Kashtira. Because like as long as they activate their field spell, you can just summon the extra deck monster on top of it, and then that pretty much destroys their board. So it's so powerful, you need to play itself to beat itself.
Interesting.
Yeah. I feel like there's a lot of that in Yu-Gi-Oh.
So,
you can't beat them, John.
That seems to be the problem. I'm looking at Yu-Gi-Oh at the moment, and obviously, in the general TCG world, we're seeing a lot of new offerings. Star Wars coming down the pipeline, Locana we'll talk about later. One Piece is doing well. I don't know if you guys are playing it, but
I've tried it a couple times. I know some people who play it. They all seem to really like it.
Yeah. It seems to have a really good opinion from gamers. Like outside of the, I've tried it once, and I really need to get into it and just trying to understand how the meta goes. But I'm just going to ask you, Parker, just how do you feel do you think Yu-Gi-Oh is bringing in new audiences? Because it does sound like it's a rather complex meta to sort of step into at the moment. How do you feel like Konami is doing in that way? Because, I know that conversation has come up, I'm not sure about in Pokemon, but in Magic over the last couple months, it's like, how is the company, enticing new people to come into the player pool and not pushing people out?
So that is actually something that came up. I actually should have wrote something like that down. They had a big meeting between, like the corporate meeting, and they were saying that Yu-Gi-Oh isn't bringing any new players really. Like they're staying consistent. We still have like a lot of people going to tournaments and stuff, but it's not like growing at all. So they're going to be making some more steps to like bring in more players basically. And like we already talked about the 2-player starter deck set that's coming out. So like they're already making some steps, but I'm excited to see what else they can do because it's pretty much stagnant at the moment, not really growing as much as it could.
Yeah, I mean, I've talked to a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh players locally. We'll be talking like, I've thought about getting Yu-Gi-Oh before, and every single one of them locally I've talked to says, don't get into Yu-Gi-Oh. And when I ask why, it's just like it's too much to learn. Unless you're willing to fully invest in it, it's just like it's a side game. It's very complicated, lots of triggers and all that. It seems like a whole lot for new players, especially like new players to card games in general. Like, how do you like approach that as someone who doesn't even know what a trigger is, right?
Yeah, and it's like you don't just have to know what your deck does. You have to know what your opponent's deck does so that you can stop them.
Exactly.
So it's like you have to
need
know
to know
so
the timings
much
to actually make sure your cards actually go off.
Exactly. Master Duel helps a
really
lot
know
with
that
learning the
magic
timings.
comes.
Yeah, Master Duel does help a lot with just like getting into the game, but like I feel like you get max seed a bunch of times and you don't want to play anymore.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, like you said, you're talking about a game where it's run on these razor thin, like plays. Like you can either you either floodgate somebody and lock them out of something, and you're not playing, and you've got to really break that board, as you said before, or ultimately, you're sat there and you're not doing anything. The fun is like very, very like minute and very thinky. So like from the entry level all the way up to the competitive level, it doesn't feel like there's a lot of that in between, like like where Commander would sit, or where I'm sure a more casual Pokemon would play like sit or something like that.
Like a competitive deck versus like a casual deck is like such a big gap. Like the casual deck doesn't really get to do anything.
Yeah, it's just a jank sort of fun. I made this deck based on the TV show or something like that.
And sometimes like you just have a crazy hand. Like I played a game this week against somebody where I had like pretty much the exact counter to his deck. He couldn't do anything. I just had everything just to stop him. He like just conceded after one turn because he couldn't do anything.
And that's the other thing. Like usually after 2 or 3 turns in Yu-Gi-Oh, you can sort of tell where this is going, right?
Yeah.
Like you either got the momentum or you don't, because the resource thing doesn't come up a lot.
Yeah.
And I was just curious because obviously as we're seeing a lot more competition coming into the TCG space, and we build this show as a big 3 TCG, it's like where is that float line? Obviously, something like Pokemon's always going to have that, huge brand collector recognition. Magic's sort of, the granddaddy of them all. And I'm just interested to see where that position, Yu-Gi-Oh's position as number 3, sits with, Flesh and Blood and One Piece and Lucana all biting at the heels.
Yeah, I mean,
I've heard some interesting sales statistics that are, suggesting Yu-Gi-Oh! In terms of like recently top 3 may not be top 3 for like recent sales. I've seen like One Piece. We're getting very, very big sales. Now, again, it's it's still fairly new. Whether that's long term or not is a different thing. But apparently, it's been really taking off.
Well, I mean, you also got to think about market printing as well. Like, One Piece might be printing less at the moment because they're not anticipating it, so it's making the product get more expensive, thus driving more sales. But in the case of Yu-Gi-Oh, it's in every Walmart,
Exactly,
and Toys R Us, and it's almost as much as a role play item for kids who like watching the cartoon. But is there even a cartoon at the moment? Like, I haven't heard about it other than like the classic one for a while.
I don't think so. Really, right now, no. There's a manga going on, but
I guess so. See, even like somebody who's an engaged player like you're just like, I guess the franchise exists somewhere. Yeah.
I just like it because it's a complicated game. I don't know. I'm like, I see all the complaints about being too complicated, but I like the complexity. It's like more skill expression, and it's more fun for me whenever you can like interact a lot and like.
It sounds like one of those things. Like once you really get it, it sounds like a lot of fun. Just getting there is a real steep, like skill.
It's a grind for sure.
Yeah. And you obviously are forced into certain meta choices, as you are in any of these games. But you are forced to react to it, at least in Magic or something like that. You can hope to get those poor mana draw turns and stuff like that, where you can just you get that little bit of advantage. Whereas in Yu-Gi-Oh, every single card play matters. Like that is the resource.
Like
right?
sometimes you can do it in the wrong order too.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
That's I should have done it like this.
I guess the games are so like short for Yu-Gi-Oh as well. Like Magic, you have turns a dead draw, or occasionally. Obviously, if everyone have games, you just get blown up for that. But same with Pokemon. Some games you are over right away if you draw poorly. Sometimes you have time to get there.
Yeah, and even like some you have to expect your opponent to like stop you too. Like if he has this card, then I should do this. If he has this card, I should do this. And then you have to make a choice based on what one they might have. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have for Yu-Gi-Oh right now.
Okay.
There's not a ton to talk about, really.
Okay, so obviously with Yu-Gi-Oh there, we were talking about some Worlds things and stuff coming out. Obviously it's summer season, so the Worlds tournaments are going on. So from Yu-Gi-Oh, I know this weekend has had some big news with Pokemon and Worlds and stuff like that. How's that going?
It's some pretty big news. We had our new set come out. We have Worlds just concluded yesterday. So before we get into Worlds, because there's quite a bit to go on with that, we'll cover the new set a little bit.
Okay, tell us about it.
Gone over it quite a few times the last few episodes. Obsidian Flames, officially out on Friday. It's mostly a filler set, which to the people at home who don't know, that just means that typically our North American sets are made up of 3 Japanese sets with a small amount of their EX and like V starter products mixed in. This is one Japanese set that is one Japanese set, and the rest is just like these starter products clumped in. So it's definitely on the lower value for collectors and players.
So is it a lot smaller then in like the set size?
No, it's a full size set.
Okay.
That's why it's a filler set.
Right. And so there's not a ton of anticipated like big cards in it that you think are really going to shake up.
Charizard EX is in it, so the collectors are going to lose it for that.
Right, okay.
And they have been.
Yeah, catnip for collectors.
Yeah, player-wise, there's some really interesting cards, but whether or not I think they're going to be like hugely meta-impacting is another story. We've talked about a fair bit of them in the past, like the Clefable EX, Toad's Cruel. Some new ones I've seen, though, that I didn't cover last time that may be interesting. There is a new basic Cleffa, which 30 HP, it's just one prize. The only thing that really makes it interesting is an attack that costs no energy, and you draw up to 7 cards.
Okay. All right, so it's basically I'm gonna like just bait this one prize.
It's a one prize, small liability. You get to play your hand. If you don't have a way to draw it back up, you just end your turn with 7 cards in your hand.
And it can be played basically in any deck because it's energy free. So.
Oh, exactly. It takes no energy to actually play it, so you can splash into anything you'd like.
Interesting.
There's another one as well, Lunatone. It's a psychic. Really only interesting for its ability. It has an ability that if you have any Soul Rock in play, it prevents all effects of Stadium cards done to your Pokemon.
Okay, so even effects of your own card. So
of your own Stadium. So, for example, a big card that this would be impacting is a Path to the Peak, which blocks the abilities of Rule Box Pokemon, like Ting-Lu EX is really relying on its ability because it says when if there's damage counters on your opponent's Pokemon that are an EX, they don't have abilities. The Path to the Peak would stop that. But if you have Lunatone in play and a Soul Rock, suddenly they can't turn off your Ting-Lu anymore.
Right.
So it's much more oppressive.
Okay, interesting. All right, I mean, that sounds like a nice little combo. Is it seeing any play yet, or is it just
it's not legal
new?
yet. It just came out on the 5th, so we'll need to wait 2 weeks before we start seeing anything. It is a little bit to ask. You need the Lunatone and a Soul Rock. But it
basics, I guess. But
but certain decks would be more willing to make that compromise, I think. Another one is Glamora EX. This is something that would probably want to take advantage of that as well. It's stage 1, pretty decent attack. It's 2 fighting. I believe it hits for 140 and poisons, which is pretty decent numbers. You're 2-shotting most things, but more importantly, it has its ability is similar to an old card we had called Parallel City. Parallel City was a card. This was back whenever there was some stadiums had 2 sides that impacted each player differently. So this is only one side of Parallel City, but it's the only side of Parallel City that people played the card for. And it's whenever this Pokemon is in your active spot, your opponent's bench is limited to 3 bench spots.
Okay. Okay. All right. Yeah. A little bit of that used to be. I think in the original, not the original, but early days, there was like a narrow gym stadium card that did something very similar.
Yeah, it's been an effect they've done in the past. Even like more recently in Sword and Shield, we had Collapse Stadium, which puts it down to 4.
Right.
But for both players, Parallel City and this card is exclusively against your opponent.
Wow.
Yeah.
I've been playing a bit of Pokemon, so I believe there's the basic version of the Glamora has an attack that evolves it.
Yeah, it has an Ascension, yeah.
Yeah, so you can just get it out.
Yeah, so for one fighting, you attack, it becomes Glamora EX, and next thing you know, if you win second, your opponent's locked out of having 5 Pokemon in play, which is very, very relevant for most of these decks these days, like Mew VMAX wants a lot of bench space so it can draw cards. Palkia wants bench space to do damage. Most decks just want bench space so they can do stuff, draw cards, do whatever they need to.
Throw down things that have abilities just for the ability's sake,
right? Exactly,
yeah.
right? So I think it'll be a bit of a niche deck, but it's like a rogue deck, but it has some promise.
Cool, okay.
Other than that, there's the obviously good things. We have Charizard EX, hits big, sets itself up, what's not to like.
Yeah. And collectors love it.
Oh, and it's Charizard, right?
And it's
so
Charizard,
all the collectors are collectively losing it.
Yeah.
Let's see. We mentioned the Rever Room EX before. It seems really, really niche. Its ability just lets it have 4 tools on it. We've seen cards in the past that allow you to stack tools, like a Honchkrow V, but none of them have really quite gotten there. Path to the Peak turns that off, and once you turn that off, you lose all those tools anyways. I don't really see it being very relevant, but it maybe.
Okay.
We also have Pidgeot EX, which was mentioned before. It just has Quick Search, which is once per turn, tutor. Search your deck for any card you want.
Okay.
Nice.
I want that. That's crazy.
Cool. Yeah.
So that will
That's
probably see a
Pokemon.
bit. That'll probably see a bit already.
Yeah. I would think so.
Other than that, we have a Letter of Encouragement, a new item. It's if one of your opponent was knocked out during your opponent's last turn, you can play this and search your deck for 3 basic energy. Only relevant for certain decks, I think, like Gardevoir wants it just so they can get the energy into the discard soon. decks that play the Bax Caliber that lets you accelerate as many water as you want per turn will want that likely. But I don't see it being a really like meta-shaping card. It may see some play.
Okay.
One interesting one, so two very interesting cards. One's a tool and one is a stadium. We have the Pokemon League headquarters is a new stadium. The attack cost for each Pokemon in play, both for you and your opponent, costs one more colorless.
One, okay.
Oh,
So that sounds like a good combo with that and the one that doesn't affect your stadiums as well.
Yeah, you could exactly set something like that up.
Sweet.
It's really relevant into Lost Box, which is basically just a bunch of single prize basic Pokemon that have very cheap or no attack, right? And now suddenly there's a cost slapped on that, which really slows them down.
Got Thalia.
And the last thing is that there's Vengeful Punch, which is an item. It's when the Pokemon this card is attached to is knocked out by damage from an attack, you put 4 damage on the 4 damage counters on the attacking Pokemon. Relevant against Gardevoir because their whole thing is they set up their Pokemon by doing damage to it, so they're often very small health pools when they're taking these big one-shots, and this will usually get you a return knockout.
Okay. All right. That's not bad.
So that's really it for Obsidian Flames. Not a whole lot of relevant cards going on. We do know our next set for November. At least we know the name. We don't really know much about it. It's Raging Surf. Talked about that, I think, even like they had trademarked that, I think, the first episode we had.
Okay, right. Yeah. So this is finally coming to fruition.
Yeah, finally coming to fruition. We've seen the pack art. That's all we've seen. It has a Water Terra Garchomp, so there'll probably be a Garchomp EX. There's a Goldango EX confirmed. Groudon was on the pack art, so a lot of fans are happy about that. It's been a while since we've seen a possibly important Groudon card or good Groudon card.
Okay.
So Groudon fans are living.
Right, okay.
Let's go.
So this is the English, but we haven't seen it from the...
We've seen the Japanese pack art, but we haven't seen anything else, right?
Right, yeah.
Tapu Koko, Jirachi, some fan favorite Pokemon that haven't really seen a lot of relevant cards lately that we don't know what they're going to be good, but people are really hoping. But that really brings us to the conclusion for new product. Let's get into Worlds.
Okay, the Worlds. All right, that was a big showdown. Tell me about
there's been quite a bit of controversy around Worlds leading up to it, and
okay.
So for Worlds, what happened was initially Worlds, they say, hey, it's happening in August. Everyone have fun. There's going to be an Open as well called the Yokohama Open. How the Opens typically work is like if you're not at Worlds, you can go to this Open and get points ahead of time for the next year's season, right?
Right, okay.
So they had all these side events planned. It looks like a fantastic event, fantastic venue. Everyone's going to Japan, having a great time. Until Pokemon came out and said, well, by the way, if you aren't in the event and you want to be a spectator, you have to enter a raffle to get a spectator pass.
Oh.
So a lot of people had already purchased, flights and accommodations for Japan, and now they weren't even able to see it. Then they doubled down on that. So even if you had a spectator pass at Worlds, there are specific side events that they raffled off entry for. So you could win a spectator pass for Worlds, lose every other raffle for side events, and you're just kind of standing there watching people play a card game.
Wow. Okay. And what did they give a reason for limiting it in such a way, or
not really? They just said that that's what they were doing based on they expected a lot of people to show up, which I guess is fair. Japan's done a lot of raffles with their Pokemon products in the past, like a lot of like new sets and like new like Pokemon themed stuff, like these like deck boxes and all that are given away based on a lottery as well. Like you enter a lottery to be able to buy it.
Right. Okay. You get to the prize is you get to spend money.
It's a really weird system. It's
they're geniuses.
The Japanese players.
TCGs in a nutshell.
I guess the Japanese players weren't really surprised by this, but a lot of the North American and like world players were not very happy about just going in. But not enough to stop them from going. So.
Right. No. Okay. So they went through with this plan, and I assume that there was a lot of disappointed people whose numbers didn't get called, or did they fix something? What happened?
No comment.
Okay.
Pokemon. It's Pokemon.
Well, actually, let me clarify. They did say something, and not related to the raffle. What they did was they decided to cancel the Yokohama Open. So now, if you can't spectate, you can't go into side events. Let's go to the Yokohama Open, have a good time, play some Pokemon. Actually, no, it's canceled.
Let me just interject. Today's episode, Wizards of the Coast, will be played by the Pokemon Company for the vitriol it is going to get from its players for canceling an event that people traveled internationally for.
Yeah, people weren't very. Now they did cancel it with some notice, but not very much. It was like 2 weeks in advance, I think.
Okay, even still, not even enough for international
anywhere
travel.
Near
Yeah. That's crazy.
Jesus.
So what was there a riot? Like
honestly, players were just pretty upset. They updated their website saying, "Hey, sorry guys, that was really about it. It's canceled. Have fun doing the other world stuff that you can't actually do."
We hear the new Nintendo Land is fantastic. Go visit that trip here.
Yeah. Wow.
Go check out some of the stores around Japan or something.
Exactly.
Come play Yu-Gi-Oh.
Yeah, go to Yu-Gi-Oh. There you go. They have World Series.
Apparently, they need new players.
Ooh, maybe.
Pokemon. They're in cahoots, maybe.
Maybe this is like we got
Steal
too
your
many
players.
Konami's got some
This is like-
Pokemon execs in their pockets.
It's the TCG equivalent of people like getting pulled from the border entry up to like different states and stuff like that. It's like we're gonna be bussing in Pokemon players for the Yu-Gi-Oh world in Japan.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway.
Bust them out to Barcelona for Magic. Maybe,
Yeah.
Well, other than that, Worlds went off fairly well. I haven't heard of any controversy with Worlds itself, but it also just happened. We did get to see the top 8. We do know our official Worlds winner, and it is Vance Kelly playing Mew VMAX, a deck that I've talked about a fair amount in the past as a deck that has really held on in terms of relevancy, but I thought was on the way out.
Yeah, it's sort of been middling ground in the top 8s you've mentioned
Exactly.
recently. Like if there's 1s or 2s,
it might show up every now and then. It's something that that is very easy to tech for. There's a lot of techs for it, but here we are in Worlds, and there's 3 Mew VMAX in top 8. So I think I'm not sure this is saying that Mew is really the best deck, but I think it's a case of people slept on it. They didn't include these very strong counters to Mew, and because of that, Mew got to run rampant over the event.
There's no side deck in Pokemon, right?
No, there's no side deck.
If there was a side deck, Mew would be.
If there was
nothing.
side decking, Mew would not be a deck anymore.
Yeah, that's
everyone
crazy.
would run just like 4 Drapion side deck.
Yeah.
And 4 Spirit Dome, and
Yeah, and that's all you need.
it just doesn't get to play the game anymore.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, there's a conversation, just to jump off for a second. Do you think that Pokemon should have a side deck?
I don't think so. I think
like-
how they designed the cards, it's very specifically without sideboarding being a thing. Now, could they adapt the game to do so? Of course. It would change the card design. But at the moment, it's definitely not something they could just say, hey, there's a sideboard now.
Do you mean because of the resourcing that the game uses? Or do you mean, like, what specifically do you think inhibits that?
How Pokemon typically prints counters is how that becomes a problem. So, for example, we'll use Mew specifically. There's 2 very decent Mew counters right now. We have Spiritomb, which is a single prize Pokemon. You put it on your bench, 60 HP. It says all of your opponent's Pokemon V in play have no abilities. So Genesect V, which is like their draw engine, no longer draws some cards. Big deal. We have Path to the Peak, a stadium. Good not just in the Mew, but it's also good in the Mew. So that hurts them as well because it turns off Rule Box Pokemon's abilities, which Genesect V is. And we also have Drapion V, which is a Pokemon that it swings for 180. It's dark, and it has an ability that its attack is 4 energy, but the ability is for each fusion, single, or Rapid Strike Pokemon in play, its attack costs 1 less. And Mew only plays Fusion Strike Pokemon.
Right, okay.
So now you have a Drapion that, for 2 prizes, 1-shots Mew VMAX, no matter what. There is no amount of reductions that I'm aware of, at least, in Standard that they can apply that prevents it from being 1-shot.
Okay.
So if sideboarding was a thing, I'll put 4 of those in the side of my deck and say, oh, you're playing Mew, just take 4 random, close my eyes, pick 4 cards, Drapion goes in, I probably win that match.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, yeah, because they're such like board state counters, because there is no player turn interaction, off turn interaction.
Exactly.
And it's so
I
easy
just
to
hold
find what you
Drapion.
need with being able to just churn through your deck so fast.
Oh,
right?
exactly,
That'd be the other
right.
big thing.
Pokemon is a very, very fast game, so it's not like it's not like, oh, I'm going to put like 4 Drapion in, but there's still a chance. I'm not going to put 4 in, so I hopefully draw into 1. I'm putting 4 in because I can see 4.
Yeah.
Almost every game, right?
Exactly, yeah. And
Unless
with
you get
Magic,
the
there's just, even if you put 4 of something in from the sideboard, there's a chance you just don't see
it
any
just
of them.
increases your odds of seeing that card, right?
Interesting.
And
Definitely not
you
the case
need
with
it in
Pokemon.
your opening hand or it's useless.
But Pokemon gets there
full
sometimes
spectrum.
too.
Yeah. Well, it's just interesting to think about that these 2 games get that sort of luxury of having sideboards and between best of 3 sort of alterations. Whereas Pokemon, if you've got a bad matchup, Because they play best of 3 in Worlds and stuff like that, right?
They do, yes.
Or best of 5, I guess, maybe.
Yeah,
in
only
final,
the Japanese standard events do they do best of 1.
Right. Okay. Yeah. It's just interesting to know that element of a TCG is excluded from Pokemon. It's not something I've thought about before. But yeah. Anyway, back to Worlds.
So Vance Kelly won with Mew VMAX. Tord Reckliffe, who I was personally rooting for to win, came second with Gardevoir EX.
He's got a fair few Worlds under his proverbial
he's
belt,
got quite a few regionals. I'm not sure if he has multiple Worlds. I think he may have one.
Okay, maybe it's.
But
maybe
he has a lot of
regionals.
Like one of the most winning players when it comes to regionals as of late.
Yeah, I think if you said, could you name a Pokemon
most
TCG player, that's the only person
Tord
I could name.
Yeah.
He's like the name.
Yeah,
he's the Finkel or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah. We saw some other people as well. A Hong Kong player named I'm probably going to butcher this, so I apologize.
Fair enough.
Pan Kai Hing. This is the one individual I couldn't seem to find his deck list online. Everyone else I managed to combine. I looked through the VOD. I just couldn't seem to find the stream. We had an individual from Singapore, Deoncius Lee.
Okay.
Also probably mispronounced your first name. I apologize if you're watching. Played Mew VMAX. We had Azul Garcia Griego, a player who also is a very well-known player, well-known streamer for the game, does well at regionals, played Mew VMAX. Okay. So a lot of very good players decided to bring Mew VMAX.
Was that the buzz going into it? Like,
there was a bit of buzz. I think the buzz was more like people weren't expecting Mew to necessarily do well, but there was a lot of buzz with the top players that people weren't teching for Mew.
Okay.
So that kind of just lets Mew do what it needs to. It's just consistent. It's fast, right? It has a simple game plan. It gets there.
Yeah.
We had Victor Manuel Garcia Montez from Mexico also playing Guard EX. We had Shoichi Saito from Australia playing Lost Box.
Homeboy.
And we have Michael Premola from the USA, another longtime player. I believe he has a Worlds from, like 2016 or something like that, 2014.
Okay.
Long time ago. And he was playing Giratina Lost Box. So not a lot of not a widespread, no Lugia at all. It's kind of been on the way out for a little while now, and this kind of seems to be unless Pankai played it, then it seems like this may just be the deathbed for Lugia.
Well, you always said that might be the case once that rotation came around.
It's been a long time coming, right? People, I think, have just been trying to force it for as long as they can at this point.
Right.
But other than that, so that's our top 8 for Worlds. They announced some new product at the end of Worlds, or some new features and mechanics for the game more specifically.
Okay, all right, let's jump into that then.
So there's a new tag of sorts. So before we've had like Fusion Strike, Battle Style, Single Strike as just like an additional piece of text on the card that certain tools, items, and trainers may interact with, right?
Like a super type. Sort of like, Magic sort of has like snow and...
World, snow, legendary.
Yeah. Like there's an Inteleon VMAX, but there's also Rapid Strike Inteleon VMAX. And the only difference is this has a Rapid Strike tag on it.
Right. Yeah, okay.
As an example, right?
Okay. I don't know why I started with World. That doesn't exist since Legends. I don't know why that one came to mind.
Well, I'm not editing it out, so...
Sorry, they are different cards, but like they have the same name, but the name itself is the exact same, but there is this tag on it that makes it
super
different.
Type of sorts.
Exactly.
Is this what I've seen? That this is sort of like past and future or something like that?
So there's future and ancient to reflect the Paradox Pokemon from Scarlet and Violet. Violet's all future themed for their Paradox Pokemon, and Scarlet's all like dinosaurs and prehistoric stuff.
Okay, I didn't realize that was a difference between them. Okay.
Yeah, that's like the real version difference. One is just all like it's like here's some Pokemon, but they look like dinosaurs, and here's some but the robots.
Okay, right. Okay.
Pretty much.
Right. A lot of steel types there.
Yeah.
But we saw some of the cards, not very many. One, we confirmed that there is cards that interact with it. We saw a Brute Bonnet, which is one of the Scarlet Paradox, one of the older ones, like dinosaur themed. It has an ability that it references a card called Ancient Booster Energy. We haven't seen Ancient Booster Energy in the games. These Booster Energies are things you can attach or make these Paradox Pokemon hold, and it gives them like buffs, I guess, like stat buffs or something.
Like special energy cards.
Well, for the video game, right? So now they're trying to incorporate that into like the card game, it seems. So in the video game, I think it's just stat boost. I'm not really quite sure. In the card game, though, like Brute Bonnet has an ability that if it has an Ancient Booster Energy attached to it, energy capsule, sorry. So I'm assuming it's an item.
Okay, right. That's just confusing. Using the word energy there was the
Ancient booster energy capsule.
Okay, right.
Yu-Gi-Oh lengths for now.
I just find this interesting because you mentioned they're bringing something from the video game into the card game. I don't have this written down because I have a lot to talk about and I don't have time to get into everything.
Yes, we will have to get to that soon.
But they're actually doing that in a new Secret Lair product. It's an Angel Commander deck, and they are printing a card from the Magic the Gathering game for the Genesis.
Really?
That only exists on there, and now it's been paper. And it involves dice rolling.
Do you mean the Dreamcast?
Dreamcast, yes.
Dreamcast? Yeah.
Dreamcast.
Yeah, Dreamcast was the Japanese only one. Interesting.
Was it Japanese only, the Magic game?
Yeah. I don't think it came out in Japan. Yeah. That's interesting. I love it.
It's not good.
Yeah.
And they might bring out other cards from that. There's one that's like Blood Moon, but you randomly pick the land type it becomes or something.
Right.
They're all random based. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's what they were playing with back then because they could have RNG in video games more easily than they could in whatever.
Yeah, dice didn't exist until about like 2014. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Very recent technology.
If you do your gaming history, of course.
Yeah. But other than that, the Brute Bonnet doesn't really seem that relevant. The impact of it having this is that it poisons both your active and your opponents, which is like 10 damage between turn for both of you, which is not ideal. They also revealed that there's going to be some Paradox Pokemon EX, so just big basics basically that have powerful abilities and attacks, and they have these future and ancient tags. We got to see two of them. We saw Roaring Moon EX. It's a dark type. It had an attack. It was decent. I think it's like 150 for 3. But more importantly, it was the first attack. It has 2 dark and 1 colorless. You knock out your opponent's active Pokemon. Do 200 damage to itself. So it has 230. So it survives the exchange.
Interesting.
But it puts it at a point where it's going to be one shot by basically
anything that comes in off of it. Yeah.
Cool.
Or even that tool you mentioned earlier that puts 40 damage.
Exactly, the Vengeful Punch. And a lot of things can take it out.
I can hear it.
So I'm not sure that's something that'll see a lot of play, and maybe something that gets teched into dark decks if they start seeing a little more support. But at the moment, I don't see that seeing a lot of play.
Okay.
The other one we saw was Iron Valiant, which is one of the future Pokemon. It's based off of Gardevoir, I think. It's like a robot Gardevoir.
Okay.
It had an attack. It was it dealt 200 damage. Again, a decent number, but more interesting was its ability. For once during your turn, every time a Iron Valiant EX comes into the active, apply 2 damage counters to any of your opponent's Pokemon.
Okay. All right. So you can just be doing shenanigans with swapping in and out,
basically. You can just swap 2 or 3. These are the basics. You don't have to evolve into them or anything. You just get them out. You swap in. That's 60 damage. If your opponent has a 60 damage thing in play, it's just dead.
Wow. Does it have a high retreat cost or anything?
I believe it was 2, so it is a little on the higher end. So getting it in and out consistently would be difficult, and it does have to start on the bench during your turn. It can't, like, if your opponent knocks out a Pokemon, you can't promote the Iron Valiant and say, hey, I'm doing the ability. It has to start on your bench during your turn, which does make it a little more difficult to get that off.
Okay.
But it's nice to see they're printing some more spread options for the game, because it's been a little while since we've seen a good spread deck that isn't just Sableye and Lost Box.
All right. Cool. All right.
And then the last thing for Pokemon, really, for Worlds, is they announced the return of Ace Spec cards.
That's what I wanted to ask you about. Okay, cool. Tell me about that.
We haven't seen anything at all for what they're doing with it. They just said, hey, Ace Spec is back. Ace Spec, for those who don't know, these were cards printed back in the day. A lot of them are based off of old, not like base set, but like old, like Wizards of the Coast era Pokemon cards that you used to be able to play 4 of. Now you can run 1 copy in your deck. We have like Master Ball. There's the most relevant one that people usually bring up is Computer Search, which is you discard 2 cards from your hand and then you tutor.
Okay,
search your deck for anything you want.
So we expect that that's going to be the same thing.
I would expect that it's going to be a limited card, 1 per deck. Whether or not it's going to be the same A-specs or brand new ones, we really have no idea. There's a lot of speculation. A lot of people expect to see some of the older ones come back. But, I mean, in the past when Comp Search was relevant, it was one of those, like, sure, A-specs are a thing, but this is the A-spec you're running. Right. So there may not be something quite as powerful. Maybe they'll try and tone it down so it's more flexible. but we're really not sure.
We'll have to see as well. I assume they're probably going to play with it in the same way they play with supporter card typing as well, where there's going to be Pokemon attacks that affect it. You know, if you played an aspect this turn, that sort of thing, like you see. I'm really excited. I mean, I always liked the A-Spec mechanic when it came out, like, you know, whenever it was, 2011 or whenever it was. But yeah, no, I was curious, and I know that Pokemon constantly sort of juggles in that space of that limited one per deck. Because is that not what
right
Prism
now,
Star was doing all that years ago?
I think the Prism Star. Well, right now we have Radiant, which is effectively the same thing.
Right.
For
Maybe that's it. Yeah.
I think Prism Star may have been the same.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, if I remember, like I'm dusting.
It's not the first time they've done a one of limitation for cards in your deck, though, right? Mm-hmm. I like it. I think it's nice to add that restriction as long as they give you a healthy variety of options. Mm-hmm. Radiants kind of suffer from a similar issue where they only. Well, I guess three of them see play now. Initially, it was really only Radiant Greninja because it let you draw cards.
Right.
Charizard, Radiant Charizard also saw a bit of play just because it hit really big. Mm-hmm. And now Radiant Malagazam sees a bit of play because it lets you move damage counters around your opponent's Pokemon. Mm-hmm. And some decks use that to set up kills they couldn't before. Some do it just because they need to have damage in play to do things. Mm-hmm. But it sees play, kinda.
Right.
It's very, very niche.
It's so funny to see that of the three games, Pokemon's the one that leans into that one of per deck sort of thing the most, I think. I don't think Yu-Gi-Oh has anything.
Only if it's hit on the ban list.
Yeah, only if it's on the ban list.
Magic
but nothing that's like... Magic doesn't do it. Nothing like... Unless the Commander or something like that.
Even Commander
like there's a format reason for it or something.
Vintage.
But it's just so fascinating that the game with the most tutoring and searching of the deck decides to lean into this like sort of one-of restriction.
I think that may honestly be why. It's because it's so easy to find these powerful cards that they have to limit you to one, right?
Yeah.
Because it gives you the possibility of prizing it. Like it does include a little more variability. Mm-hmm. A lot of these decks can see their entire deck in 2 to 3 turns if they play optimally, right? Or they draw well. Yeah. So you're going to see them no matter what if they're in your deck if they're not prized.
Mm-hmm. Interesting information for sure. Yeah. Okay, cool. So what else is coming out? Anything else from
that
Pokemon?
kind of wraps it up for Pokemon.
Awesome.
Just a lot of Worlds and Obsidian Flames is out.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And I'm excited. When's 151 due?
That's September, I believe, 21st, I want to say.
Yeah.
It is September. I'm 21st, 22nd, somewhere around there.
Yeah, I'm seeing some, spoilers and stuff like that pop up. And,
exactly.
Obviously the full
there was the initial
out.
Hype. It's going to slow down a bit. Give it like a week or two before it releases. And people will get hyped about it again. Yeah,
that's when I think I'm going to jump into the game again on. But all right, so we got Magic and...
We've got some things to talk about.
I honestly, I've tried to avoid this news for the most part over the last couple of weeks, but it's so hard to because it's just been what people have been talking about. Obviously, Gen Con was recently, and Magic had a whole bunch of stuff to talk about, but I'm going to let you jump in and take it.
Let's start going back to Lord of the Rings, like we were talking about past couple episodes. And
old business first.
Yes, the One Ring. The One Ring has been bought by Post Malone.
For
$2 million.
Yeah.
Only $2 million?
2.6 or something?
I think that's in Canadian.
Oh,
$2 million USD.
Okay, right. Okay.
Not much more to say about that. Post Malone owns it now. I'm sure he'll own the next one-of-one card they do.
Is he going to chuck it in the volcano?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, well,
he might put it in a big chain, maybe. That'd be cool on stage.
Well, we've seen who's the guy, the influencer guy, Paul. What's his name?
Jake Paul.
Jake Paul, Logan Paul.
Logan Paul.
One of them. One of the Pauls. Yeah. Wore in like one of his boxing matches, or sport his brother with a mint Charizard, or even like a competition card from Pokemon. So these things are becoming like pop culture, like status symbols amongst our generation.
I used to joke about that, like, I'm gonna get a card graded and wear it on a chain, and now people are actually doing that.
Yeah, exactly. It's like in the '90s they had like Flavor Flav wearing these giant clocks, and now they're like now it's just like a slabbed BGS graded card.
Yeah, I'm gonna get a whole. Booster box sealed in a booster box.
I can imagine the next music video of Post Malone is like him rolling out and got his One Ring.
He's been balling out these days. Those new albums just like popping, just like playing guitar in every song. He's calmed down.
All right.
Still buying $2 million Magic cards.
Right.
From
Canada.
Then we have the Commander Masters released. It is a reprint set of Commander cards.
Yep.
That's kind of all there is to say about it, other than the fact that the price is gross. and terrible.
Yeah, they decided to up the individual box prices,
Yeah, it's
right?
basically the cost of that double Masters was, where the packs are about like twice as much as you would expect to pay for a normal pack.
Yeah.
It's especially bad because in the past you'd have the standard releases be the cheapest releases because that was the most popular set. That was the entry level.
Right.
Now, Commander's the most popular format, and you want to get into entry-level Commander, you can buy the precons from this set for $80, which is expensive.
Crazy.
You can buy the packs of this set for like, $15, $20, whatever they are.
The individual packs.
Yes, individual
packs.
packs.
That's where Okay.
Wow.
Everything about this set is so expensive that it's kind of gross to be like, hey, new players, give us all your money for randomized packs or commander decks that are bad. They're not great. They're okay and they have good cards in them, but the mana bases aren't that good. They're a fine starting off point, but you can also get a deck that might be a better or just as good starting off point for like $40, which is the cost of the other commander decks.
Yeah, it's interesting though. Like these price points, like a lot of people I've talked to that don't play card games, usually the number one thing that say that the one reason they're not interested is the price point.
Yeah.
And now they're having all these like the commander to clearly recognize it's a casual format. It's what they want all these like new players to get into, and now they're already trying to get the hand in the wallet.
Exactly.
Well, this is one of the most interesting things, and I think you brought up a good point I hadn't thought about, the accessibility.
Yeah.
You said Commander is basically going to be the way that most new players are going to engage with the game. But the thing that really interests me is we've sort of been through, Throne of Eldraine sort of introduced collector boosters, and then after that there was set boosters. So we've sort of been in this world for almost like 3-4 years of like these alternate booster products. Where it's like you've got your normal draft booster, which has your 15 cards or whatever, your normal Magic booster pack, and then you've got your set and your collector booster after that. I'm interested to see, you guys, as far as Pokemon Yu-Gi-Oh go, don't have any alternate booster product when a set comes out, right? You've just got the box that comes out, right? There's no like collector's Pokemon box or something, or collector's Yu-Gi-Oh box. I know Yu-Gi-Oh has special sets that are like all gold foils, all ghost rare or whatever.
Nothing quite like that. There are products that come packaged with the new set that are separate, but it's usually like there's like the Elite Trainer boxes are a common one where they come with like dice, they come with things to help people play the game, but then they'll shove like 5 or 6 packs inside of it of the new set.
Right.
But it's not a special set they're doing specifically for that.
But there is no like Obsidian Flame. If you have an Obsidian Flame booster, there is
It's
only ever an Obsidian Flame booster. There's no Obsidian Flame booster collector's version where you can get the alternative arts and stuff
of the
like
set,
that.
it's the booster of the set period.
Yeah.
Same for Yu-Gi-Oh.
Yeah, which is interesting because I was looking, and we're going to get back to Magic in just a second, but I was looking at the set list for that 151 we were talking about, and obviously there's a bunch of alternate arts. There's like, 100 alternate arts, but they're just available in a regular booster pack. You don't have to do what Magic does where you've got to go buy a specific type of expensive booster pack to get what you want.
Right, and that's kind of what keeps the Pokemon prices lower. We have these base printing of all these cards, and we have all these special alternate prints that are in the same pack, right? So the collectors get what they want, the players get what they want, all for the same price point.
Yeah, well, it's really interesting. I'm just obviously I just wanted to sort of highlight the fact that we've seen this from Magic set over set over set, and to some success, obviously.
Yeah.
We're talking about
absolutely.
how I think the market price for these Commander Masters is dipping a little compared to where they wanted to set it.
Yeah.
But it's just interesting we haven't seen it from these other sides, and I just wanted to highlight that. That seemed like a really interesting.
It's interesting, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if it's just a Japanese perspective thing because obviously a lot of their products are marketed over there. But when we're talking about something,
I've seen it in a Bandai game, which is also Japanese.
Oh, okay, like a collector's booster specific thing.
They
What
did
game was that?
for Dragon Ball Super.
Okay, I want to circle back to that later if we have time. But yeah, no, I just thought it would be interesting just to hear about that and see if that ever sort of comes in, especially when we have things like Pokemon Company International putting together these sets cobbled together out of like starter product and sort of a set rather than a full set. Yeah, we'll have to wait and see. But anyway, sorry, back to Commander Masters, Nico.
Yeah, that's pretty much all there is about Commander Masters, but on the topic of collector boosters, October 1st, we are getting the Doctor Who Commander decks.
Okay.
Universe Beyond, Doctors Who Commander decks, and collector boosters. So we haven't seen this yet. We saw the Warhammer Commander decks, which were, just Commander decks. You get your 100 cards. They're all Warhammer themed, some reprints, some new. But now we're seeing Commander decks for Doctor Who, as well as only collector boosters. So it's not a full set like Lord of the Rings was. It's just collector boosters, which I assume just have the cards from the decks and maybe alternate arts of them.
And I assume maybe reprints with Doctor Who theming? Maybe? I don't know.
New cards? Who knows?
Okay. So this is just a way to leverage a non-booster set into being a booster set.
Exactly.
Crazy.
Yep.
Yeah.
And, they revealed some cards. They mostly seem like, just janky stuff for commander players. Oh, there is one that does make an infinite turn combo, which is always fun.
Time travel.
River Song, who makes you play from the bottom of your deck, pairs very nicely with Time Stream Navigator, who's a creature with an activated ability where you take an extra turn off with that one, and then you put that card at the bottom of your deck.
Oh.
Usually they do that sort of effect on extra turn cards and let you not loop them from the graveyard, because that's very easy to do. But putting it on the bottom of your deck works quite well with... And then
when you're drawing from the bottom of
your
your
deck.
deck.
The bottom of your deck the next turn, do it again.
I love the fact that what probably was just like a little like quirky, hey, how can we do time? How can we represent time going backwards? A draw from the bottom of your deck turns into a crushing combo.
Yeah, so Time Stream Navigator is like a bulk mythic from Rivals of Ixalan, has gone up, I think, in like 1,000% price spike or something, obviously.
Yeah.
Other spoilers we're getting from Wilds of Eldraine. Not too many notable cards to talk about. They only show a couple cards at the very start. But it is a big change of only one Planeswalker now. So each standard set release is only going to have one Planeswalker. And the main reason is because, obviously, Planeswalkers stuck in Commander. 3 other people have a turn to hit them. You can't have them as your commander, so they want their cool characters to be legendary creatures, obviously. So, it just kind of makes sense that even though Planeswalkers were the big selling thing for Magic for a long time, they're kind of changing that to legendary creatures. So only going to be 1 per set now, and that plays into the whole Omen Path arc.
There are some Planeswalkers you can play as commanders, right? I think they
only
specifically,
some. They specifically say though.
Right?
Yep. One of them doesn't specifically say. That's because it has other text on it that says it counts as a creature when it's not on the battlefield.
So
yeah.
So it's a creature in your hand that comes into play, or it's a creature in the command zone. And
often a creature in your library is what's relevant, because you can search for it with things that look for
Right,
creatures to get a Planeswalker instead.
Interesting.
Other thing with it is, like a lot of other recent standard sets, we have an extra sheet of reprints. These ones are all enchantments with kind of like fairy tale themed artwork. Wilds of Eldraine is a fairy book world. Last time we saw the Throne of Eldraine, very powerful set that had a big like royal presence. This one is more about the wilds. As the main characters try to put together the kingdom again, as we kind of see the results from the Phyrexian invasion. And it's also the first set in the Omen Path arc, which is the next big story arc for Magic.
The what? Okay, so I haven't heard anything about this. The what arc?
The Omen Path arc.
Omen Path.
The Omen Paths are the paths that the Phyrexian made going through the planes.
Oh,
now they just connect every plane. Most of the planeswalkers are desparked. Only 1 per set, as that kind of.
And there's some weird interconnectivity set that they have planned for that, right?
It's the next big Magic story arc, the Phyrexian arc, like the Nicol Bolas arc before that. So that's kind of all we have for new spoilers that they've shown for cards specifically. But the big thing is the Pro Tour. We had Pro Tour Lord of the Rings happen in Barcelona. This is a modern Pro Tour, and we have the top 8 here. In 8th place we had Kai Bude, legendary Magic player.
I think the most. He is the Tor Reblev of Magic the Gathering. He is like the most decorated Pro Tour player. I didn't realize he made top 8.
He made top 8 in his first top 8 in 13 years.
Yeah, that tracks. I think 2010 makes sense.
Playing Temur Rhinos, which is one of the biggest decks at the Pro Tour.
Okay.
It's a Cascade deck, so you use cards that have Cascade. It means you flip cards at the top of your deck until you find something cheaper and play it. The idea is the cheapest spell you play in your deck costs 0, and you play nothing that costs 1 or 2. It has other ways of casting it. You can't cast something that has no mana cost on its own, unless you Cascade into it or suspend it.
Okay.
You always are just going to Cascade into it, though, and it just makes 2/4/4 Rhinos. So you do that on turn 3 with a Cascade spell. That's how the deck works.
And it just goes and goes and goes.
Yeah, so your interaction, use cards that have like multiple abilities that add their mana costs. So if you have something like Fire and Ice, it's like each side costs 2 and you can cast 2 sides, but the total mana value is 4, so you don't Cascade into that. So that's how you keep your interaction. So these Cascade decks, there's 2 of them. Temur Rhinos is the one that did better. Living End is the other one. That is used cards with cycling, cheap big creatures with cheap cycling costs. Put them in your graveyard. Living End brings them all back from the graveyard into play. Similar type of deck. Temur Rhinos end up doing a little bit better because it kind of just has a better late game because it gets to play Murktide Regent, which was a big dragon that exiles cards from your graveyard to make it bigger. We had Kai Bude with Temur Rhinos, as well as Marco Del Pino as well with Temur Rhinos. Javier Dominguez at 8th place as well, playing Mono Green Tron. These new Tron lists are playing 3 copies of the One Ring main board, 1 copy sideboard, and then 4 copies of Karn to go get the One Ring from your sideboard.
Right. Okay.
So it gets to play 8 copies of the One
So
Ring.
it's still
right?
ringing.
7 copies.
Yeah.
It plays the ring.
Still ring trues.
Also, a bit of a less of an influence on playing 7 mana spells. How the Tron lands work is Urza's Tower, Urza's Power Plant, and Urza's Mine. If you have all 3 of them, they tap for 7 together. 3 lands tapping for 7. This one, knowing that Blood Moon, which turns all non-basic lands into just mountains, knowing that was going to be a big part of the format, that people kind of brought it down to like powerful things that cost 4 instead. So it has that late game plan of trying to get, late game, turn 3, of trying to get to 7 mana, but if it can't, it still has a lot of good cards that can just play for 4, 5, 6 mana to, kind of stall out the game. Then at 4th place, we had Dominic Harvey with Amulet Titan. This is the one deck that made the top 8 that isn't like a big meta deck. It's still a great deck, and Dominic Harvey is like a specialist in this deck.
Okay.
Big combo deck, wins super fast, pretty resilient to what people are doing, and also is playing the One Ring as a kind of late game thing. Simon Nielsen as well in 4th place, as well as Mono Green Tron. And then our 2nd place and 1st place. 2nd place is Christian Calcano playing Mono Green Tron. A couple different versions of the different Tron lists, playing Giganther, Dismember, different things you can't play if you play other things. And then number 1 was Jake Beardsley, who's a player you probably have never heard of because it was his first ever Pro Tour.
Okay.
And he won.
Okay, good there.
Yeah. Playing Rakdos Scam, or as they call it on footage, Rakdos Evoke.
Okay.
Because Scam has bad connotations, I guess, even though you're playing the card Grief.
Well, I mean,
whatever. I'd say Grief is worse than
Talk about
Scam.
TCGs, the word scam can be a little bit dicey.
Yeah.
Especially when the coast is in charge.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Anyway,
how these Scam decks work is you're playing the big Evoke elementals, which I'm sure I've talked about before. Grief, for example, is a 4-mana spell, 3/2 with Menace. When it enters the battlefield, you look at your opponent's hand and you take a card out of it. It also has the ability Evoke, and its Evoke cost is exiling a black card from your hand.
Okay.
So Evoke means you play it and then it instantly dies.
Yeah.
Now use that with cards like Feign Death, as well as Undying Malice. And what these do is that you target a creature, and when that creature dies, it comes back to the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter. So the idea is turn 1, exile a card for Grief, take your best card, Undying Malice, it comes back, I take another card, and now I have a 4/3 with Menace on turn 1.
Okay.
The decks have a pretty good long game too, with like Ragavans, Fable of the Mirror Breakers. They can hard cast their Grief and Fury, which is same type of card, just deals 4 damage to creatures. It can often get grinded out by the other decks, but when it has its explosive starts, it just scams. It scams the game, right? It steals wins is the whole idea. And despite only being 1 in the top 8, it was, I believe, the most played deck at the Pro Tour. Okay. And had a 54% win rate, which is pretty big. Yeah,
that's strong.
Other notables, results and things from the Pro Tour was Daniel Kristoff going 8-2 with Merfolk. Okay. A deck that's been, recently. Recently people have been like, Fish sucks now, but managed to go 8-2, which is pretty impressive. The Omnath decks with the ring that I was talking about before, very heavily underperformed. Okay. People kind of just figured out how to beat them. Okay. As well as Yawgmoth, which was very popular, but just kind of underperformed. I think a lot of players just like playing Yawgmoth. Right. And I think that's why it was very well represented. As well as getting a bunch of new cards, Orcish Bowmaster and stuff that it gets to play with. Murktide Regent, which was formerly the best deck in Modern, has kind of been replaced by the Cascade decks. Okay. Not that Murktide Regent doesn't see play, and with what I'll get into, it will see a bit more play again. But it just didn't do that well. Right. It didn't, didn't see the top 8.
Now, obviously, the reason we'll have to cut through treacle of the modern event here, but the big question I want to ask is, obviously, it was Pro Tour Lord of the Rings because that was the most recent set, and Lord of the Rings was one of those sets that got printed directly into the modern format, so not skipping standard. Yeah. And obviously, you already mentioned things like the Ring and Bowmaster and stuff. Like, did we see a huge meta change from the impact of that card pool coming into modern?
Definitely, yeah. Especially with the Green Tron list being able to play the Ring and focusing more on 4 drops is pretty big. As well as, Team of Rhinos did get a couple cards from that, especially Lorien Revealed, which is an interesting one. It's 5 mana, just draw 3 cards, but it has Island Cycling for 1 mana. Okay. And what this lets it do is that it lets it cut down its land count because it's not playing many spells turn 1 and 2 anyway. Right, okay. So it only plays 14 lands.
Okay, right, because it's got the cycling ability.
It's got the cycling ability. It adds a card into the graveyard for Murktide in the late game. It can just draw 3 cards if you need to. And since it's a blue card, not a land, lands don't have color, it can be pitched to Subtlety and Force of Negation,
right?
Which are other pitch cards, right? The XL cards of the same color from your hand.
Counterspell and stuff. Yeah.
So it just it gets that little boost, which is nice. Living End also did well at the Pro Tour, not top 8, and got all those new big land cyclers that we had talked about before. Scam is running 4 copies of Orcish Bowmasters. That's the main card.
The big stuff, yeah.
Same as with Yawgmoth. A couple other decks running, 1 or 2 of the One Ring. So yeah, it did have a pretty big impact on the format and really shook things up.
That's awesome to hear. Now we are running out of time, so I'm gonna have to jump straight through to. There was some big announcements, coming out of the Magic stable over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Primarily from Gen Con. They had like a little info thing. Yep. Tell us a little bit about like what came out. I've sort of seen tangentially this stuff.
Yeah, I just do want to add one more thing.
Oh yeah, go for it.
Immediately after the Pro Tour, not immediately, but a couple weeks after, we got a ban list. A lot of people were expecting, Violent Outbursts from the Cascade decks maybe to get banned, or the One Ring. We ended up getting no bans.
Yeah.
Preordain is unbanned in Modern, which will make them. It's good in Murktide decks, but I won't see play kind of anywhere else, maybe except for like off meta, decks. And then Mind's Desire is unbanned in Legacy, which is related to a new version of High Tide in Legacy. So decent unbans, cards that should be unbanned, but no bans is a little questionable, especially.
It was weird, yeah.
Especially considering that Wizards of the Coast is printing more Lord of the Rings later on in this year. I think they want to sell more rings. Yeah.
Specialty product for Lord of the Rings is coming out later. But speaking of product.
So speaking of product, for some reason they decided to give us everything they're putting out for the next 3 years, all in one big announcement. So I'm just gonna rapid fire through those.
I think that's the only way to do it because we don't have a ton of information outside of their set names and stuff like that.
So, as I already mentioned, we have Wilds of Eldraine. The next standard set after that is Lost Caverns of Ixalan. We already knew about both of those. Yeah. Lost Caverns of Ixalan specifically is going to have a Universes Beyond tie-in with Jurassic Park for some reason.
Right.
Next year, we are going to get Ravnica Remastered, a reprint set of all the different Ravnica sets.
Yep.
Then we're going to have Murders at Karlov Manor, which takes place on Ravnica, but doesn't work like a usual Ravnica set. It's a murder mystery set. And, of course, there's going to be Ravnica Clue Edition to go in with that, because Universes Beyond. After that, we're going to get Fallout Commander decks, similar to the Warhammer Commander decks.
Okay.
Like the video games?
Like the video
but
games.
No booster product.
No booster product, no.
That's just the Commander decks. Okay. All right, interesting.
Then we have Outlaws of Thunder Junction, which is the Western Magic set.
Oh, right,
which is the Villains crossover Magic set, where all the villains are going to meet up at some sort of junction of planes and do bad things. I don't know.
Okay. Right, like all the previous Magic lore or something.
Yeah.
Right, okay, fair enough.
Then we have Modern Horizons 3. Modern Horizons 1 and 2 completely ruined Modern in a lot of ways. Printed more interaction, and people just scam with them. Anyway, let's do it again. Let's see what happens.
Well, I mean, wasn't Lord of the Rings supposed to be like Modern Horizons 3?
It basically was.
Now this is like the actual official numbered one.
Yeah, the one other thing is that it's going to have flip cards. So, if you
like flip cards. When you say flip cards, like, you mean like...
Transforming cards.
Oh, like... upside.
Two sides.
Two sides, right. Not like
double-sided. Yeah.
Not like Kamigawa flip.
No. Well, you never know. Then we're gonna have Bloomborough, the next standard set. Bloomborough is
looks exciting.
It does look nice. Yeah, it's all no humans. It's all like animal-sized creatures. Like to an accurate size, right? Like just a mouse with clothes and like weapons and stuff.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it'll be cute.
Like a little fantasy, like
cute little fantasy
Pixar type round.
Followed up by Duskmourn House of Horrors, which is an infinite horror mansion.
The thematic clash of those two going one after the other is just.
Then we're gonna have. Similar to Lord of the Rings, similar size set to the Lord of the Rings is a Final Fantasy set.
Yeah. I saw this.
Is strange.
Doesn't Final Fantasy have a card game?
That's why I thought it was strange.
Lord of the Rings used to. Lord of the Rings used to.
Yeah, it definitely did.
That's all I have about that, really. And then also somewhere in there's going to be a booster product. I don't think it's going to be a full set, but it's going to be Modern Legal based on Assassin's Creed.
Okay.
So, sure. Past here, we have Innistrad Remastered, a similar remastered reprint set. And then the rest of them, they don't have official names yet, but we have code names. So we have Tennis, which is a racing genre set, a cross-plane with the Paths Death Race Magic set.
Right, so like Mad Max or, the Twisted Metal, I guess, is probably the contemporary joke on it.
Then we have Ultimate, which will be a return to Tarkir, a fan-loved plane.
Okay, cool. I didn't even realize that.
That'll be nice.
I hadn't heard that.
Yeah. Volleyball is going to be a space opera.
Okay, right.
So sure.
Sort of what they teased with, what was that unset that they did? Infinity?
Infinity.
Yeah, so it's sort of like the serious version of that, I guess.
Wrestling is going to be a Lorwyn return, which is exciting. Yachting, which is a Strixhaven return.
Okay, wow, coming back to that
coming
quickly.
back to that pretty quick. And then ziplining, which is going to be the finale of the whole arc. And that is also the end of that codename convention.
You're right, like A to Z.
They go
ziplining
A
is
to
Z, yep.
they go A to Z in whatever theme. This one was all sports.
Okay.
For these sets. That's pretty much all I have for Magic.
That's there's a lot there, and I would love to unpack. Unfortunately, we're running low on a lot of time. Which means we might have to forego crack, build, and play. The one thing I do want to mention to the audience, again, as I mentioned up top, if you have been listening to the show for a while and there's some things that, you see what you love about the show, what you want to see change, what you love about the network as well. I want to sort of consolidate all of our, our talents and our conversation into a singular place that might find, a better resource for you guys as listeners. So let us know what your suggestions are. Again, you can email me specifically, Rands, via the email address in the description, and via the comments on YouTube, or through any other means that you can get a hold of us, whether it's social media or whatnot. Check the description again to find those links. Also, I want to mention our sponsors, obviously Category 1 Games. If you're into classic collectible card games, you can jump over to them and buy a bunch of stuff there. But the other one, if you're into the big 3 TCGs, is I highly recommend jumping over onto Toad and Troll using our sponsor code TBP N5, and you'll get a discount on anything sold directly from Toad and Troll. Check the description as well to find out more details about that. We do have to get out of here because we're using a public space, but I do want to just quickly throw you guys, thank you so much for joining us, obviously. Yep. Now, Parker, this might be your last episode with us here on the network. Unfortunately, you've got some other things going on. So thank you so much for joining us. It's been an absolute amazing thing, and hopefully at some point we can try and figure out a way to incorporate, your opinion into the network or something like that. Obviously,
you'll always. It's been a lot of fun. I was happy to do it.
Yeah,
I hope I can come back again.
Okay, well, I want to. You mentioned it before. I wanted to go out quickly. There is some other TCG news that's come out lately, and if you can cram it into about a minute spiel, what's going on with Dragon Ball? Like, people are freaking out because Dragon Ball is like going through like a change or a rebirth or a reboot. What's going on there?
They announced the digital client a long time ago for the card game, and recently at Gen Con they announced that the digital client is going to be for a brand new Dragon Ball card game called Fusion World.
Okay.
So this is basically a dumbed down version of Dragon Ball. It's going to be available in paper and on the digital client. So they're pretty much just starting a brand new card game.
Okay, but it is not cross-compatible with the old one?
No.
Okay, right. All right. I can see why people are freaking out then.
So people are really annoyed because they wanted the actual game for the digital client, and now you have to invest in a whole new game to play.
Oh, I am curious how that's going to turn out.
Yeah,
I'm sure well.
I would love to discuss it, but we do not have time right now. But that is crazy. But again, hopefully we see some more contributions from you in the future in whatever form this show ends up evolving into. Thank you guys for obviously listening to the sort of first 7 or 8 episodes that we did for this show. And hopefully when we come back, it's going to be in a whole new form. So until next time, thank you guys so much for listening. Before we leave, I'm going to get everyone to sound off again. Our Yu-Gi-Oh expert,
Parker.
Pokemon expert,
Tyler.
Magic expert,
Nico.
Perfect. And then I have, of course, been Rands. Before I say my sign-off, I want one more time to hear, what was the name of that Yu-Gi-Oh card again? Hot Red Flaming...
Red Dragon Archfiend King Calamity.
Hot Red Fiend Archfiend Flaming Calamity. Yeah, I can't even try and say it once right. I was going to try and say it a couple of times quick, but that's about it. All right, thanks so much for joining us for one more episode of TCG Scoops. I've been Rands. Until next time, if there is one, keep shuffling.